Kicking off a new project can be a pretty daunting prospect, especially if you're building a new product or service or if you're working with a new client. There's usually somebody that knows almost all there is to know about what the expected outcome of the project is, and if you're tasked with understanding the project as well as they do, it can feel like a pretty massive task. So many questions. What is the project? Who's going to use it? What will they use it for? How do we expect them to interact with it? How will you know if it's a success? What are our goals? Today, I'm going to show you how you can bash through these questions so quickly, you'll probably be finished before the coffee orders arrived. This method is a bit of a spin on the more traditional user journey planning and card sorting exercises. It's particularly useful when you're working on projects where the scope is still quite high level and functional requirements might not have been fully thought through, but I find it to be suitable for most UX or requirement gathering workshops. It gets people thinking, forces them to consider things from all angles. So, let's say you've started working on a new project and you are tasked with making sure the end product has an amazing user experience. At this point, you have a really basic understanding of what the end product is meant to look like, who's it for and what its goals are. Where do you start? You could ask the product owner or client to tell you what it is that they think is the best solution, but the problem with this approach is that they often have an agenda of their own. If they do try to come at it from the perspective of a user, they're probably really thinking, what would I do if I were the user? Which is better, but still only the opinion of one person. What we really want to do is get as many different perspectives as possible on the following juicy nuggets of goodness. Who could potentially end up using the solution? What might they end up doing with the solution? How do we prioritize these things? And how do we know if our UX is right? When you consider that an app or a website could have multiple types of user, each doing multiple things, you can start to see that gathering this information could quickly get out of hand if you don't have a structured approach. So this is the structured approach. This is how we usually run our UX workshops. Step 1 is to get a good mix of people in the room that will be involved in the project. These are likely to be the client or product owner, members of their team or company, and members of your team that are going to be involved in building the solution. Start off with a conversation about what it is they are aiming to build. For the sake of this video, let's say the client has told us that they want an online sock shop. And then we get to the meat of our approach. Here are some things that you're going to need. Pens, post-its, and sticky dots. You will also need a whiteboard or a wall. Step 2, identify who might be using the thing that you're building. To do this, we split up into groups of 3 or 4. Each group gets a pen and a pile of post-its. The aim is to think of as many different users for our sock shop as possible. Some options might be a new sock buyer, a returning sock buyer, a customer with an outstanding order, the store manager, a member of the shipping team. You might get some duplicates between the teams. It's up to the person running the workshop to group those into one card as they appear. I'm guessing that person is going to be you if you've gotten this far into the video. Once everyone is out of ideas, we need to work out who our priority users are. This usually comes down to which users are most important to the business, i.e. customers. But depending on the solution that you're designing, you could find that priorities lie with other users. To prioritize our users, we turn to democracy and sticky dots. Everyone that has a valid perspective on the solution. This could just be the subject matter experts if you're designing for a very niche product or audience. Get a set of dots, one for each card on the wall. In our case, everybody in the workshop gets 5 votes because they all have valid perspectives. They're all wearing socks and therefore they're potential users of our solution. All users can distribute their sticky dots however they please in order to highlight which user they believe to be the most important. You could add all of your dots to one user or give all of the users 1 dot each. At the end of the voting session, we tally up the scores and find out who has been identified as a priority. In our example, we have some clear winners. The customers are the users that we want to prioritize. So the next step is to think about what these users might do. The new sock buyer was identified as our top user, so we will start with them. We repeat the card sorting process in our teams, but this time we're looking for things that our users might be looking to do with our solution. What are our user journeys? These could be things like searching for new socks, buying new socks, looking for contact details, finding a stockist, find out if we have a physical store, filter socks by colour, filter socks by season, find socks that are suitable for use with sandals. We then repeat the voting process to get an idea of which of these user journeys is most important to the user in question. You're going to start to get a lot of different bites of information during this process, and depending on the makeup and priorities of the team involved, this information may end up being used for different things by different people. It could be used to gather functional requirements if there's a BA involved in the workshop. Perhaps you want to look at SEO and use this information to identify target users and keywords. Maybe you're working on content strategy and want to identify key messages to get across to your target users. Usually, I personally would be using this strategy to identify and prioritize key user journeys. Once I've got a list of these and a general understanding of how important they are to users and the client, I will either spend a bit more time looking in detail at specific user journeys, asking users to repeat the process for individual tasks, allowing me to gather enough information to start working on wireframes and site structure, or I might use the information that we have collected to identify measurable goals which would eventually end up being used in user testing studies or on-site analytics setup. The key thing is that you stay in control of the workshops and make sure that you gather the information that you need. And that's about it. Using this simple method, you can rapidly collect and collate info from multiple people at the same time, which will help you very quickly flesh out those requirements. Hopefully this will come in handy for you. If you have any questions or comments, or if you've got a project that you'd like to talk to us about, you'll find the contact details in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hope you like the video. See you soon. Bye.